Hello, this is Maya Moore, and thank you for coming to the More Beauty Love channel. So today I'm going to be talking about something I'm very passionate about, and this is actually a demonstration that you're going to be watching very shortly, and it's going to be covering machine hair strokes on dark skin. And I know you don't really see that. So this is monumental. This is something that you're not going to really see very often. So you've seen it here first at More Beauty Love. Again, nano machine hair strokes on dark skin. If this is your first time here, please subscribe, like, and comment, share. And one more thing, turn those notification buttons on so you know when my next video is going to come out. And dark skin is not isolated to African American or black skin. Every ethnicity has some level of melanin rich tones in that particular ethnicity. So there could be a wide range of individuals we're thinking of or that you are thinking of when I'm saying dark skin. But this demonstration is going to give you a glimpse at how to perform the nano machine hair stroke service on people with darker skin tones, because it is a little bit different. There are some techniques that you have to keep in mind. In this demonstration, I'm not going to be going into depth about like color theory or, needle selection, things of that nature, because all of that is covered in a course. It's covered in this mini course that I've put together along with this demonstration, but it gives you a really amazing foundation and a framework of how to work on melanin rich skin. So if you're interested in that course, you definitely want to click the link in the description box, which will give you details about the course, and it's online, so you can access it anytime by going to morebeautylove.com. Remember, this is not microblading. If you're new to this channel, this is a nano needle hair stroke technique. It's done with a machine and a single needle. So it is not cutting and opening the skin in that respect. It is puncturing little pigment drops into the skin. So I do have a lot of other videos where I'm talking about the difference between microblading and nano machine hair strokes. So if you're interested in knowing more about the differences, please check out those videos. Finally, before we get started with this demonstration, I want to let you know that there may be some questions you have, about specifics, like, oh, what needle depth are you at? Or, just anything. What pigment did you use? What numbing cream did you use? If I don't explain those things in the video, then you gotta wait until you take the class. But if it's something that is not covered in the class, it's a very unique question, and I don't cover it in the class, I will definitely answer that question for you in the comment section below. So please send me your questions. And even if it is something that is mentioned in the course, I'll let you know. You know what? It'll be best if you take the course, because you're going to hear that information in depth in the course. And if it's not something that's mentioned, I'll give you that full detailed answer there. All right. That course is not going to be expensive because I'm thinking about you all out there. I'm not making these courses expensive, but it's all about the learning, and I really want you to get this information. So enjoy. I begin the service by cleaning off her brows with alcohol wipes. And next I will begin brow mapping. I use the string method to do a large bulk of my brow mapping. I just like to get the starting lines for the client's face. I get the head, the arch, and tail. And then I also get the baseline, which is the bottom of the head, the top of the head, and then the top of the arch. And then I begin to connect all the lines together to create a template shape. Once I have all my lines, then I take my pencil, my Sharpie pencil, and I outline the perimeter of the design and just soften all the lines, soften all the curves and edges so that it looks more natural and it's just not, lines that are running into each other making intersections. So now we have the brow. And from here, I'll just clean up all the lines and I will show my client the template shape and she will let me know if she likes it. If she doesn't like it, we'll keep making adjustments until she's happy with the design. And once she's satisfied, what I'll do is I'll place my signature brow ruler on her face, and then I'll begin to work on the next eyebrow. And ultimately, I'm creating a twin or a sister for the brow that I have created previously. Once I've created the shape for the second eyebrow, I then go along all the lines with, or the outside lines with a Q-tip or a toothpick Q-tip, something that has a little bit of solution on it. I like to use hand sanitizer or alcohol. You can also use green soap, but I'll use some of that solution on the tip of the Q-tip, and I will clean up the outside of the brows so that when the client sees the final shape, she doesn't see a whole bunch of lines all over the place. She just sees the outline for the brow. So that's what I'm doing here. Once the brows are approved by my client, I will get a photo with her thumb next to her brows, just approving the shape. And then I will lay her back down and I will begin the pre-draw process. And this is what you see me doing here. And I'm really just following the natural flow of my client's eyebrows and just wanting to make the pre-draw as clean as possible. I don't want to overcrowd it with hair strokes. I definitely want to have a good amount of space between each pre-drawn stroke so that I can see clearly where I'm drawing and it doesn't look smudgy. One thing that I love about pre-drawing my strokes is it really gives me an opportunity to make sure that both the brows look very similar in their design. It's also a great way to make edits to your pre-draw. Like maybe you didn't totally like the way that hair stroke looked when you drew it. So you can always erase it with a little solution and a Q-tip and then redraw it again. Now, if you just went right in and started tattooing, you're not gonna have the opportunity to make any type of adjustments or edits like that to your design. And again, I'm leaving a lot of space. You can clearly see each hair stroke. That is really important when you're pre-drawing. You don't want to overcrowd your space. Her natural hair has more of an upward and outward flow to it. So I know right now the popular technique is the lamination look where everything is more, wind blown and up and out and very wispy. Her hair naturally grows like that. So again, I really want to honor and try to flow in the direction that her hair is moving in so that the brows, so I'm not fighting against what her hair is doing and I have to work harder to make it look nice and blended. Now I'm adding just a few smaller strokes in between the basic skeleton that I created, just so that this demonstration goes a little bit faster than normal. So I'm adding some secondary strokes just to fill in the brows a little bit more. And voila, that is my pre-draw. It looks really nice and defined and very beautiful. This is one of my favorite designs to create, and I love this natural hair flow. And now that my brows are fully pre-drawn, I'm going to go right into tattooing her eyebrows. I do not pre-numb prior to doing my first pass of tattooing. In my experience, I found that when I did not pre-numb the skin, the pigment was absorbed much quicker into the skin versus the times that I did pre-numb. So as a general rule, I like to avoid pre-numbing my clients. It is a very tolerable process. I've never had someone say, I can't take it. It's very, very minor pain, and many of them fall asleep, so it's very comfortable. Okay, now that the service has begun, you can see that I'm actually starting on the tail of the left eyebrow. So I'm not starting at the head, and that's because I'm left-handed and I prefer to do a bulk of my tattooing from the forehead area as opposed to working on her eye socket and near her eye and lashes. I find that I'm just heavy-handed and it can be a little uncomfortable for the clients, so I try to do most of the eyebrow on the forehead area. So I am actually on the right side of the client and I'm pulling towards myself, and starting at the tail, I'm able to pull towards myself, so pulling towards the head. In terms of my speed, I am using a speed of 130. I'm using an AMIA device, the Facile device with the Genius Pro handpiece. And the needle I'm using is called the Nano 1, which is a single needle, and the diameter is a 0.25. And it's an amazing, amazing machine. It causes less trauma to the skin. That's one of the reasons why I love it for higher Fitzpatrick's, deep skin tones, because darker skin is a lot more prone to hyperpigmentation, to scarring, to bruising, and in general is just more sensitive overall than your Fitzpatrick's 1 through 3. I am all done with my first pass, and as you can see, there are visible strokes, not extremely dark, but definitely visible, and it just has laid a great skeleton in the skin. Next, I'm moving over to the right eyebrow, and as you can see, my hand is planted on the forehead. Again, I like to keep a majority of the work on the forehead area, and my fingers are not resting on the eye socket. It's very important when performing nano machine hair strokes that you move at a slow, steady pace. I always encourage my students to count and breathe. Remember those two things. Breathe, take deep breaths, deep inhalations while you're working, and also count 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, and just get really comfortable and get in the zone. But don't worry about trying to speed through the process, because when you do that, it actually makes the process take longer because your strokes aren't fully saturated and you have to keep going back over them because they're lacking the saturation that you need, and the skin is getting more irritated, which means it's not accepting the pigment as it would have if you had done it properly the first time. So if you do it right in the beginning, you won't have to do a lot of reworking and reworking. I wanted to mention that my client's skin was actually very sensitive and extremely reactive. When I did the cleansing of the skin, she started to develop these small pimples in her brows or little pustules in her brows. And I was concerned. Thankfully, before I began to get started on her pre-draw, I noticed they went away. So her skin was very sensitive. I was concerned we would not be able to get through the service, but she did very well. Again, having a high-performing device and cartridge needles, I think it makes a huge difference in the amount of trauma that you are inflicting on your clients. So in this case, she was able to get through the service with minimal redness. Of course, there is some redness because we are using a single needle, and hair strokes are regardless of the technique, manual or with a machine, they are more traumatic to the skin than ombre powder brows. But she was able to get through the service without any major discomfort. And now, first pass of brow number 2 is complete. The strokes look nice and clean, and we have a great foundation. Now I'm back to brow number 1, and again, I'm starting at the tail. I'm not going to reinforce every hair stroke because some were nicely pigmented, so I'm just going over the center of a lot of the hair strokes and just making sure that that they're fully saturated and everything looks nice and even. And also filling in some of the spaces that are in the brow. However, I do not want to overcrowd the strokes. I've mentioned this before. It's really, really important that you leave negative space and allow for potential spreading of the stroke or, slight migration or just widening. It's very natural for that to happen with hair strokes, and especially with Fitzpatrick's 4 through 6, you're going to see some widening of the stroke. So considering that, I want to make sure that I do not pack the strokes in extremely tight. If her brows heal well and they're not too, the strokes aren't too wide, I will fill in more. But I want to make sure that in the beginning that I don't overdo it, because we don't want the brows to look shaded after the first session. We want everything to look like hair strokes. Now, I know some artists out there, you may be really used to filling your strokes in or filling out your brow a lot or adding a lot of shading for your combination brows, and that's the look that you like. I get it. But if you really want to have beautifully retained hair strokes over time, you have to leave more negative space. You cannot do that. It's just not going to look great long term. If she wanted a ombre brow, you should have just gave her that to begin with. But if she wants or he wants hair strokes, you need to leave more space and educate your client so they understand that, all right, this is a process. We have 2 sessions and I'm going to build and layer. That's what this technique is, a building and layering technique, so that you end up with the brows you asked for and you don't end up with a powder brow, or a shaded in eyebrow at the end of your second session. Right now, I'm just adding some nice decoration to my hair strokes. I am extending some of the strokes, like lengthening the head, the top of the strokes, also extending some of the strokes a little bit lower on the baseline of the brow, and making a few secondary fill-in strokes if necessary, some things that extend and branch off of existing strokes. But again, as long as I'm leaving enough space, I am okay. And also, again, I mentioned before, her skin is very sensitive, so I don't want to overwork her brows because I don't want there to be a lot of trauma. If there is a lot of trauma, there can be a lot more lymph, which darker skin tones, deeper skin tones naturally produce more lymph. So the more trauma you create, the more lymph that it will be created as well, which means the more scabbing that is potential. More scabbing can cause more pigment lift. So again, very, very light, minimal trauma. Now I'm just going in between some of the larger areas that are open, and I'm adding some shading. So an important little tip about the way I'm shading her brows, I'm really not trying to add a whole lot of color. I want to say that again because that is super duper important. I am not trying to add a lot of color in between the strokes. This is simply my attempt to make this first session process, the first session when it heals, and sometimes people see too much negative space and they're like, freaking out, or, they're really, bothered, like, wow, it's too open. I still feel like I need to fill my brows in. So I'm just adding a hint of shading. It's a light wash of color. But when it heals after the scabbing, and the fading, the lightening, and then the color returning, she's not going to see a lot of that shading anymore. It's going to look very translucent. It's literally just to help her between now and her second session. Once she comes back, it's going to be very open, and I'm going to continue building and layering in the hair strokes. So don't go too heavy with the shading on the first session, because we all know first session brows are not always the true brow, especially when you're dealing with darker skin tones, oily skin tones. You're going to have a lot more pigment lifting. Just in general, you're going to have a little bit more work to do on the second session in general. There's always that unicorn, that special case where it heals perfectly, but you have to plan for the average client, and in general you're going to have a little bit more work to do. Okay, so now I'm working on the final brow, final pass on the right eyebrow, and again I'm just adding those minor little details, targeting the strokes that are still kind of light after they've sat and they've oxidized, and I'm still seeing that the stroke is a little fair. I'm going back over those strokes. Anything that I feel like needs to be reinforced. If I want to add a little bit more pigment in the center of the stroke, I'm hitting those strokes as well. And also adding a little bit of decoration in between the strokes, extending the top of the strokes if they seem a little short. And making sure that both eyebrows, left and right, again, look like sisters. Okay, all the hair strokes are done. And now I'm gonna go back in and just add a little bit of that soft shading that I mentioned earlier and finish off the brow. And now the client is taking a look at her brows. And I know she has a face mask on, but she's very excited and very happy about her end result. She really wanted to keep her brows very natural. She did not want them to look overly done. And here is a up close peek of these beauties. And you can see these fluffy brows, beautiful hair strokes that blend seamlessly with her natural hair. So they're really undetectable when you think about it. There is a lot of negative space that you can still see. It's not overcrowded. And then you also see the soft shading. This concludes my lavish nano technique on rich melanated skin. And thank you so much for watching.